Alright, what's up guys? New deck profile today, one that I've been fairly excited about. It is Gravekeepers, but it is the slower version of Gravekeepers that I've been promising. Basically, people have been just talking about how great Gravekeeper Spy is in the comment section of my previous Gravekeeper videos. To be 100% honest with you, I agree. I like him quite a bit. The problem is, you got to build a deck to play around him. You can't just throw him into any Gravekeeper deck because it's a little more difficult to play that way. Also, last ban list, of course, we got Royal Tribute back to 3. So this is going to focus around Gravekeeper Spy and Royal Tribute. It is one of the best control decks I think I've ever personally built. If this deck goes first, it's like impossible to lose. Honestly, it's just that disgusting. But I guess let's just get started. We're playing 3 copies of Gravekeeper Spy in this build. We've got the, sorry for the shininess. These are new sleeves. We've got the dual terminal versions here. So really cool. You can also, you can get whatever artwork you want. But basically, this effect is, when it's flipped, you could special summon a Gravekeeper monster with 1,500 or less attack from your deck, which is kind of nuts because the targets that you can summon are really, really good. You can actually summon a monster that is a floodgate right off of this card, which is just bananas. I don't play Descendant in this deck because, to be honest with you, this card is like, if you're going to play this, there's no point to play Descendant. If you're going to play Descendant, there's no point to play this. This card is just so much better than Descendant. If only it was not a flip effect, it would just be absolutely broken. But it is a flip effect, and because of that, we did build a deck, kind of around it. Play 3 copies of Gravekeeper's Commandant. This card is insane. I wish every single field spell based deck had a card like this. Basically, when you discard this card to the graveyard, you can add 1 Necro Valley from your deck to your hand. It's amazing. Sure, it does lose to Call by the Grave, but it doesn't really matter because it is both a monster and terraforming in 1 card, and it's at 3, so you don't have to worry about it. It's just so good because this card, and with this card, Necro Valley and Necro Valley Throne, you basically have 9 copies of Necro Valley in your deck, and then at any given time, this can just be a monster. It's insane. And with Necro Valley, 2,100 attack, which is quite a bit. Play 3 copies of Gravekeeper Spiritualist. This basically gives you access to the fusion monster Gravekeeper Supernaturalist. You can use this and another Gravekeeper monster you control from your hand or field to basically fuse away. In order to make a Gravekeeper fusion, you do have to have Necro Valley on the field. But it's cool because this card is basically, in regards to a fusion summon, this card basically counts for one of the Gravekeeper monsters you need for Supernaturalist and Polymerization all in one. So it makes fusion summoning not as much of a minus. So it's a really, really good card. Plus it's 2,000 under Necro Valley. Then we've got 2 copies of Gravekeeper's Headman. Gravekeeper's Headman, basically when it's summoned, which includes, by the way, flip summoned, but when this card is summoned, you can target a level 4 or a level 4, exactly a level 4 Gravekeeper monster from your graveyard and special summon, and of course that doesn't interact with Necro Valley. So even under Necro Valley, you can still use this effect. What I love about this is that you can use it with our amazing Gravekeeper Spy. You can bring Gravekeeper Spy back, and you can summon it in face-down defense position or face-up attack position, which is awesome. So you can actually summon Gravekeeper Spy, and then, use the effect of Gravekeeper Spy later, and then, kind of go on a little roll there. But I really like this card a lot. We do play a few of the slower cards, so I'm not going to max out on this one, and I'll show you why later. But definitely one of the better cards. And of course, it interacts far better with Gravekeeper Spy than it does with Descendant. Or I'm sorry, not even Descendant, Recruiter. I've been saying Descendant should be Recruiter. Recruiter's the one I don't like because it's a level 3. Then we play Gravekeeper's Descendant. Basically, this card, you contribute 1 other face-up Gravekeeper monster to pop a card. It's definitely good in the grind game, especially when your opponent's again, if you go first, you're going to win anyway, but going second, at least you have some options. But definitely, this card is very good at popping floodgates and a variety of other cards. Definitely very useful. Then we play 1 copy of Gravekeeper Shaman, and this is the sort of floodgate monster that I was alluding to earlier. So basically, Gravekeeper Shaman, it gains 200 defense for every Gravekeeper monster in your graveyard, which is already pretty crazy. And then on top of that, it negates all monster effects that activate in the graveyard, except Gravekeeper monsters, which is just unbelievably good. Because yeah, it basically shuts down a lot of the Orchist and a lot of decks that rely on graveyard effects, even in damage step, because it's a continuous effect that rely on activating in graveyard. Because unfortunately, Necro Valley, although it's very good, doesn't actually prevent effects from activating in the graveyard. But with this card, it's just another frustrating floodgate on top of all of this. And then while Necro Valley is face up on the field, your opponent can activate field spells or destroy field spells, which is pretty crazy. And of course, the effect to negate all monster effects in the graveyard actually doesn't even require you to have Necro Valley on the field. So once you summon this, it's already enough. And what's crazy about this card, you can see the level sucks. But what's insane about this card is that you can actually summon it off of Gravekeeper Spy, because if you remember, it just says a monster with 1500 or less attack, and this of course does have 1500 or less attack. So you can actually summon it regardless of the level, and on top of that, when you use it for a fusion with Gravekeeper Spiritualist, it's level 6, so Supernaturalist actually comes out at far more attack than would with a level 4, for example. But that is all of the monsters. Love it. Absolutely love it. I wish I could have found a way to include some of the, like, Visionary and stuff, but they're just a little bit past their time. Maybe next time I'll find a way to include them. Now for the spells, we play 3 copies of... What else, guys? Necro Valley. 3 copies of Necro Valley. This is like the heart and soul of the deck. It is a Floodgate field spell that both helps you with your effects. It makes all of your monsters gain 500 attack, and then on top of that, it just does all types of stuff. Basically, cards can't be moved from the graveyard anywhere, so to the hand, to the deck, anywhere. They just can't be moved from the graveyard. And then on top of that, cards can't be banished, which is huge in today's meta. Thunder Dragon, you activate this against Thunder Dragons, and they haven't set up their board yet. I mean, they basically need to scoop, because there's nothing that they can really do. The duel is basically over. And same thing with Orchist. And if Sky Strikers, for example, can't activate any of the cards under multi-roll, for example. They just can't activate them. I'm pretty sure you can't even use Allure of Darkness, because this effect is already continuous, so you wouldn't even be able to resolve it. There's a lot of random stuff that this deck just stops, and this field spell just frustrates your opponent with. And you got to keep in mind, like, most of your cards actually say that they are unaffected. Like, they will let you do the same stuff, but they are immune to Necro Valley. So you can, like, summon a monster from the graveyard, it's immune from Necro Valley, stuff like that. But yeah, like I said, insane, both the field spell and just generally a floodgate. Then we play 1 copy of Secret Village of the Spellcasters. Remember, this is a super control deck. We are not letting our opponent play, and I will show you how I get that card out. We've got Mystic Mine. This is kind of like a really, really bad field control deck. Like, your opponent is not playing. You are definitely going to win. With all of these various cards, you're definitely going to win. This is also one of the cards that will let you go second, because unfortunately, a lot of your opponents will set up insane boards, and dropping a Mystic Mine sometimes will let you just steal wins, like if you go second. Because most of the time they'll have, like, Colossus and stuff like that on the field. You just drop one of these that can't really respond. They have, like, let's say they have like 2 Colossus and a Titan. You just drop this, and now the game is all yours. They don't play any, like, spell and trap card removal in the main deck. Maybe like Dino Miscus, but if they don't draw it, they're pretty much screwed. So you just drop one of these, and then all your monsters in your deck are actually spellcasters, so you're not particularly concerned about Secret Village locking you out. Then we play 1 copy of Set Rotation. You can give your opponent one of these, and then yourself a Necro Valley, or give yourself a Secret Village and them a Necro Valley, or you can, whatever you want to do, any number of combinations. You usually can just give yourself a Necro Valley, give them a Secret Village. Most of the time they won't be playing spellcasters, so they won't dare to activate the Secret Village. And if they need to activate it to activate another field spell, they won't be able to. But yeah, it's pretty busted in that regard. Then we play 3 copies of the fresh off the ban list Royal Tribute. Basically this card, if you control Necro Valley, both players discard all monster cards in their hand. And that's, of course, why we are playing the really, really low monster count. I don't know if you counted whatever amount that was. It's a really low number count. Most of the time, you'll just normal summon into whatever you need to, and then you just discard everything else. And, of course, you can summon Shaman, and then all of their graveyard effects are negated. So it doesn't even matter that you discarded everything anyway, because all of their effects will be negated. Of course, unfortunately, with this card, your opponent, with the new rules, your opponent doesn't technically have to reveal the exact number of cards that's in their hand. They just have to sort of discard. But what is good is that most of the time your opponents will be honest, and if you catch them in some sort of lie where they tell you that they didn't have monsters and they summoned more than they said, it's actually an auto. It's like an not only a game loss, it's usually like a disqualification. That's like real cheating. Because they were supposed to complete something and they didn't. So it actually will fall back on them far more than it will on you. Then we play 2 copies of Hidden Temples of Necro Valley. Basically, if you have Necro Valley and a Gravekeeper monster, your opponent can't special summon. Pretty easy to do this. With the amount, there's so many floodgates in this deck. This is the most floodgate heavy deck I think I've ever played in my life. If you don't get stopped, if you don't stop your opponent with something, you just come up with some other nonsense and it'll all work out in the end. Then we play 3 copies of Necro Valley Throne. This basically lets you search a Necro Valley monster, a Gravekeeper monster, or it gives you it's basically like a double summon for all Gravekeeper monsters. So you can even do stuff like, summon Descendant, activate Throne, Tribute, Shaman. Summon Shaman automatically. Lets you get Shaman out immediately, along with other things. It lets you use Headman even better, because you can use Headman. You can use Headman, special summon a Spy from Graveyard, face down defense position, and then you can activate Throne to tribute the Headman, and then summon Shaman. So now you have Spy and Shaman on the field, which is just crazy, because then you get free monsters over and over and over. And don't forget, if you summon Headman off of Spy, you actually can special summon from the graveyard and then summon another Spy. Spy's not once per turn. It just creates this endless loop of stupidity. Just with all these cards, just create this endless battle phase of flipping and attacking and restoring monsters. But yeah, Throne is actually really, really good. It's probably one of the better cards of the deck. Then we play 1 Gravekeeper Steel. This card you don't want to see ever in your starting hand, but you do want to see it kind of in the middle of the duel. But basically, it lets you target 2 Gravekeeper monsters in your graveyard, and then it lets you add those targets to the hand, which is pretty awesome. Those are almost all the spells. I'm just going to reduce the amount we have sitting up here. Then we play 3 copies of Card of Demise, because again, we're not playing Pot of Extravagance. This particular build, we have a low number of monsters, so we don't mind activating this. We don't mind putting some monsters in the graveyard. Yeah, like I said, we just do not have a lot of monsters in this deck, so it really doesn't matter anyways. But yeah, that is the 3 Card of Demise, and then of course we play 3 copies of Super Polarization, because they are just a little bit too good not to play. And Super Polarization actually does let us go into Supernaturalist, among other things. It's definitely an incredibly good card in this deck, and just generally in the meta. After the trap cards, we play 1 copy of Imperial Tomb of Necro Valley, which is basically like Solemn Judgment, but in the archetype. 1 copy of Necro Valley Temple. This card is, again, another one of. You can, basically, while you control a Gravekeeper monster and a Necro Valley, your opponent's monsters lose 500 attack and defense, which, is kind of a lot when you consider that all your monsters are gaining 500 attack. But its even better effect is if you have no fields card in your field zone, you can activate a Necro Valley from your hand or from your graveyard. And on top of that, if this card's destroyed, you can set a Necro Valley card from your deck to your directly to your field, which is pretty crazy, because it can actually set this Solemn Judgment like card, or it can set regular Necro Valley. So it's pretty good for that. Then we play 2 copies of Strike, 3 copies of Judgment. We play 1 copy of Metaverse, and 2 copies of Summon Limit to stop our opponent from doing anything. Like I said, there's so many cards that just stop your opponent from playing in this. They're really not going to be able to do anything. Now, for the extra deck, we play 2 copies of Supernaturalist. Basically, this is kind of like our boss monster. We usually don't even go into him turn 1. Sometimes we do if we don't draw Demise. If we do draw Demise, then we don't go into him. I mean, who cares? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. He's not particularly necessary, but he is a very good card because he searches a Necro Valley spell card or a Necro Valley spell or trap card or a Gravekeeper monster during the end phase. On top of that, he can't be destroyed if Necro Valley's on the field, and also Necro Valley can't be destroyed if he's on the field. So they kind of protect each other. Then we play some Super Poly targets. Starving Venom, you can use that with your own monsters, which is pretty busted, but you can also use it against the meta. The Predaplant, triple Predaplant monster, which again you can use against your opponent or with your own monsters, because all it requires is 3 dark monsters on the field, and almost all of your monsters are dark monsters, with the exception of like what's his name, the one that's Commandant. But most of the other ones are all dark monsters. Play 1 Borlo Furious Dragon for various like dragon matchups. Diplexer Chimera for Salamangrates. Odd Eyes, you know what that's for. Mud Dragon for a variety of decks. Predaplant, Dracopus Sophia. And then we've got just generic cards. Nightmare Unicorn, Nightmare Phoenix, Borlo Dragon, and 2 Witch Apprentice because they allow you just to increase all your monster attacks. But basically that's it. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you give this deck a try. It basically never loses game 1. Game 2 is a little harder because, you know, you got to side appropriately to go second. But basically this deck never loses game 1. It just has way too many floodgates in it to ever let your opponent do anything. Even its field spell, even its regular plays are all floodgates. And I'm really glad that I could build a deck focused around Gravekeeper Spy because it's almost like a forgotten monster that's incredibly good. But again, thank you for watching.